Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to the second webinar of... Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second webinar of March from the Teacher Foundation. Last week, we had a wonderful webinar on mastery orientation. This week, our webinar is on new strands of assessment. My name is Maya Menon, and a hearty welcome to all those who've joined us today on the Zoom meeting, as well as those of you who are joining us live on YouTube, since we are live streaming on YouTube. What we're talking about in terms of new strands of assessment is all about data. So I want to give you a little bit of a background before I hand over to my senior colleagues, Sandhya Shivaprasad, who heads content and training at the Teacher Foundation, and Monila Sapre, who heads school well-being at the Teacher Foundation. So when we're talking about delving into data, everybody's talking about data today. Corporates are talking about data. Schools are talking about data. Governments are talking about data. So what is data? You can put it on chat, whatever you think you know about data. Since I won't be able to hear you, you could put it on chat, and I would definitely be able to see what you have written on chat. A lot of times data is also confused with information. The word information, the word or term data, they get used synonymously. And then there is another word, knowledge. So data, information, knowledge get mixed up, but they're actually quite different. If you were to look at these two images, you will get a sense of what is data and what is information. I leave it to you to interpret what these images are, because another way of interpreting the images in terms of data, information, and also knowledge are these three images. You see data as disparate bits of evidence, information as some kind of categorized bits of evidence, and then knowledge as connected bits of evidence. So what is data? Data is just plain facts, observations, statistics, symbols, images, numbers that are collected and can be used for analysis. And schools are full of data. We have lots of information, facts about what happens in school, whether it is attendance, whether it is buses that we have, whether it is student attendance, teacher attendance, student marks, teacher performance, etc. Left alone, data is not very informative and relatively meaningless. When we talk about information, what is information? Information is data that has been processed, categorized, aggregated, organized, analyzed into a more human-friendly format to provide a sort of context. We can make sense of data when it's been categorized and organized in the form of information. And then we have, of course, knowledge. Knowledge is the confident understanding of an entity along with the capability of using it for a specific purpose. So knowledge is about how do you make use of the information you have gathered from the data you gathered earlier. So knowledge has the potential to draw inferences, develop insights that assist in decision-making and taking actions. So right now, it may all seem quite a lot for you to take on. Data, you've heard about data, you've heard about information, and of course, you're in the business of education, and therefore you have heard about knowledge. But let's see how we can make the distinction, because what data are we going to be discussing today? We're going to be talking about data from every stakeholder in the school, teachers, students, parents, school leadership. How do we make sense of that data? How do we convert that data into information that we can create knowledge in, or make knowledge into? So the impact of the pandemic, and why are we talking about this? Because the impact of the pandemic on teachers and students has been tremendous, and we need to be mindful of what is the data we have, whether it is about teachers, whether it's about students, whether it's about other non-living factors like school buses and school resources and school facilities, etc. We need to be particularly mindful of the living data in our schools, particularly teachers and students. We need to also recognize this is data from WHO, data which says 20% of India will possibly suffer from mental illness. 56 million Indians already perhaps suffer from depression. And 38 million Indians suffer from anxiety disorders. Now, this is of concern. This is data. Now, how are we going to create knowledge out of this data is up to us, those of us who work in schools. Academic achievement can be traced also to more data. For instance, 6% to teaching techniques and lesson presentations. 16% to factors over which the school has no control. This again, we're getting data from other sources. This is from an international source. And interestingly, 78% to the quality of human interaction in the school. So imagine this is again, we're making sense of data that tells that academic achievement can be linked to the quality of human interaction that happens in schools. And it attributes 78% of academic achievement to the quality of interaction in the school. So I've just sort of tried to tickle you with a little bit of data, but I have my colleagues to give you a lot more in-depth understanding of how schools could make use of data. I want to hand over to my colleague Sandhya with this quote: "If you can measure and you do not, then of you it shall be said, with your ears you did not see, with your eyes you did not see, with your ears you did not hear." And I think that sort of sets the tone for what we're going to talk to you today. Over to you, Sandhya.
Thank you, Maya. Welcome everyone to this webinar. And as Maya said, we're going to be focusing on how schools can leverage data for whole school improvement. In this section of the webinar, I'm going to be presenting two strands of assessment for whole school improvement that Teacher Foundation has worked on over the last 1 year. But before we do that, I'd like all of us to think of this. What data am I talking about? All schools have access to this data. It is the outcome of all the activities of a school. It's easy to generate and also it's mandated. It's what everybody seems to care about. So what data am I talking about? Some data that is available to each of us in every school. Please do put up your responses on chat, and so that I'll be able to see it. I think most of you by now have realized it, that we're talking of student performance data. So, and for most schools, we're very happy with the outstanding results that we get, the board exam results that we get. So here are some perceptions of yours that I'd like to gather. So let's all take a Zoom poll. Okay. Sorry. So on your Zoom screen, friends, you can see 3 questions for which you have to respond yes or no. So move on to your Zoom screens and you can see the 3 questions. I'd love to see your responses. Okay, I can see that you've started responding. Okay. Okay. Let's see, it's interesting the way it's coming out. So far we have about 25, 27 people who have responded to the poll. I'm going to wait for another 10 seconds before I launch the results. Okay. So about 50% of you have participated in the poll. So let me just end the poll and share the results on this with you. So you can see it on your Zoom screen. You can now, all of you see on your Zoom screen that about 87% of you feel that a school that produces good results should still consider PD for its teachers. About 43% of you feel that good results should be the primary factor when developing a school improvement plan. About 57% of you feel that no, it isn't the primary factor. It isn't the primary factor when developing the school improvement plan. And overwhelmingly, about 98% of you feel that perceptions of different stakeholders, students, alumni, parents, teachers, does matter even when a school produces good results on a regular basis. Okay, so let's go back. Considering all of this, TTF presents the first strand of assessment, the school report card. The purpose of this report is to help a school take stock and acknowledge and celebrate its strengths and bridge any gaps in its overall functioning. So we've heard of the student report card, but now we're talking of the school report card itself. So in order to generate knowledge, or to collect data, to analyze, and to get insights for this report card, basically data is collected from 5 stakeholders: students, parents, teachers, alumni, and school heads. Every stakeholder receives a customized checklist, which enables them to reflect and give feedback on different aspects of the school. So every stakeholder is reflecting on themselves, their performance, and also giving feedback on the other stakeholders of the school. Now, this report, the school report, basically answers these 2 questions. To what extent are different stakeholders satisfied with the quality of the school? That is, with the quality of teaching learning, with the quality of infrastructure. So quality of teaching learning and quality of infrastructure are the first 2 domains of this report card. And what do stakeholders think of the school? That is, the attitudes and perceptions of all the 5 stakeholders about the school itself, which becomes the third domain of this report card. So it's a very easy process. Basically, we already have the tools ready to collect data for this, but we feel that it's really important to have discussions with the school management and the school heads to customize the tool in whatever possible way. Then the next step is to administer the survey to all stakeholders. It's an online survey. Then once the data is collected, TTF analyzes it. TTF presents the report card. Now, the interesting thing is, this is all done in year 1. From year 2 onwards, TTF will hand over the survey tools and the analysis tools, the report card analysis tools, to the school so that the school can take it forward from the following year. It's a good report card to generate, I think, year on year, to understand the perceptions of all the stakeholders about the school. So this is how the report card, a sample report card, looks like. So this is how it would look like. It is basically the hallmark of a data-driven school, right? You can see that there is analysis about each domain. Domain 1 being the quality of teaching learning, where we are talking about the level of satisfaction of the different stakeholders, of parents, of students, of alumni. We're also talking about reflection on the quality of teaching learning by the leadership and teachers. We're talking of the top scores at a glance and about the key concerns at a glance. These are all the data that we pull out in order to create knowledge for ourselves, in order to create insights for ourselves, in order to do the school improvement planning. Domain 2 is about the school infrastructure. And in the same way, we're focusing on the satisfaction levels of the different stakeholders and about things that are, practices of the school that are validated and key concerns at a glance. Domain 3 is the attitude towards school culture. Again, we're talking about how different stakeholders feel about the school and what teachers and leadership feel. Please look at here on the right side of your screen. This is a very interesting part of this report where we're talking about contrasting perceptions. As part of this tool, we administer the same kind of question to different stakeholders. And there we see how different stakeholders are reacting to the same thing. For example, here you can see that 73% of leaders say that they allot time and space for weekly collaborative planning, but 66 teachers feel that they have enough time for collaborative planning. So it is something for the leadership team to think about and work on. Similarly, we have contrasting perceptions in terms of what teachers say and also in terms of what students say. For example, 100% teachers say that they use a respectful tone to communicate with students and colleagues. But only 81% of students feel that teachers speak to them politely and respectfully. So there's a gap of 19%, which the school probably needs to think of in terms of how to bridge it, right? And of course, finally, in terms of some recommendations that we may give as part of in order to develop the school improvement planning. So all of this, friends, is part of strand 1, which is the school report card. But we all know our school improves only when our teachers feel empowered and enabled. So Barack Obama said, invest in our teachers and our children will succeed. We know it. We know it out of experience. We know it out of practice. So we present to you the second strand of assessment, which is assessment of teacher effectiveness. The purpose of this report is to assess teaching learning practices of all the teachers in the school and to identify areas of support and professional development for each teacher. Basically, as part of this assessment of teacher effectiveness, there are two parts. One is assessment of personal competencies, and the second part is assessment of classroom practices. Based on this assessment, every teacher is accorded a high, medium, or low rating in different areas. There are different criteria for part 1, part 2, but on all the different criteria and areas, there is a high, medium, low rating that is given to every teacher, right? Now, the part 1, which is assessment of personal competencies, the teachers do a self-reflection. They do it on an online self-reflection tool. And this is developed by Swayam Analytics Bangalore. TTF has partnered with them. It focuses on 3 domains, that is the professional competencies, the personal competencies, and the people competencies of a teacher. The next part of the assessment is assessment of classroom practices, which is classroom observation and rating by the TTF team. So this is actually every teacher's class being observed, and we use the classroom observation rubric, which has undergone multiple iterations as a tool to assess teachers in terms of lesson planning, teacher-student interaction, methodology, assessment, and the physical classroom environment. So again, this is, before I go on to this, maybe I'd like to show you how the report itself looks. right? So you can see that there is basically a high, medium, low analysis. Friends, whatever the report that I showed you previously and the report that I've shown you now, these are all samples of anonymized reports of work that we have done in the in the academic year 2023-24. Right? So this is the high, medium, low analysis where we're able to basically categorize teachers in terms of their teaching practice as high, medium, and low. And of course, for every teacher, we are able to then say, even for every domain, give them a high, medium, low analysis. You can see here that it is also level-wise primary school, middle school, and high school. In this school that we focused on, the high school was fantastic. The primary school, I think, needs a little more help, right? The next report is the individual teachers report, where all the different competencies that we're talking of as part of the part 1 of the assessment, which is assessment of personal competencies, and part 2 of the assessment, which is assessment of pedagogical skills. All of these, for every individual criteria, we're able to give you a report in terms of where this teacher stands. And another report is, as all of these are all the sub-reports as part of this overall assessment of teacher effectiveness, is the 9-box matrix report, where we are then able to sort of see in terms of the personal competencies of the teacher and in terms of the classroom practices, where do the teachers lie? How many teachers are high on both in terms of personal competencies and classroom practices? How many teachers are high in personal competencies, but medium or low in terms of classroom practice? So what you can see on your screen on the top right corner, the green box, are 20 in the school that we worked, one of the schools that we used this tool with last year. There we saw that out of the 99 teachers that we assessed, 21 teachers were in the high category. That is, they were high both on personal competencies and on classroom practices. 15 teachers were medium in both, and 2 teachers were low in both. But in the last column that you can see that all of these teachers are high on classroom practices, but 19 of them are sort of low on personal competencies, medium on personal competencies, and 6 are low. So this is how it gives the school an idea of where their teachers stand. Of course, if it is with a particular school, we would also give the names of the teachers who fall onto every category. So the process, again, is very, very simple, because this assessment of teacher effectiveness has 2 parts. The first part would be to send every teacher a username and a password. And then all the teachers take the online test on a specified day. Then we have an observation schedule, and TTF observes every teacher in the classroom. Data from both the interventions are analyzed, and TTF shares the reports, makes a presentation, and also gives a few recommendations for school improvement. Of course, this is a report that will help you identify who are the teachers who you can use for leadership positions, who are the teachers who need a little more individual support, who are the teachers who can be given extra responsibilities. These are the things that you can make out from this report. Edward Deming said, if you do not know how to ask the right question, you discover nothing. These assessments that we are talking of, whether it is the assessment of teacher effectiveness or whether it is the assessment, the school report card, it came from this need to ask the right question so that the school as an institution as a whole understands what is the direction to take, what kind of improvement to take, what should our next step be, and how to tweak our vision. So far, friends, we've spoken about the teacher the teacher report and the school report, but I think the school is a place, the entire school revolves around the most important stakeholder, that is the student. And we have a very exciting strand of assessment for students, which my colleague Monila Sapre will now be presenting. Thank you so much. Over to you, Monila.
A very good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Sandhya. Yes, it's a new strand of assessment that I'm going to talk about, and it is called Assessment of Children's Social and Emotional Skills. Yeah, Maya spoke about, data, information, and knowledge, how data converts into information, and then information gets tied up into solid knowledge. Yeah. All of us, as Sandhya said, have information about children's performance, how much marks they're scoring, how are they doing in physical education, how are they doing in a music class, how are they learning the various languages, are they good at math or science? We have this, yeah. But if I ask you, how are your children doing socially, emotionally? What is the data you have? You might have observations, you might have few instances, but for that to convert into information and which can tie up into solid knowledge that can help you make informed decisions about their overall development and well-being. For that, you need something called Sambhav. Sambhav, a word that means possible, which means yes, it is possible to measure children's social and emotional development. Sambhav is also a combination of Hindi or rather Sanskrit words, samajik or bhavanatmak shikshan, which means social and emotional learning. So we've been hearing about SEL everywhere. The NEP talks about it, countries talk about it, governments all over are talking about it. All schools want SEL to be there. But before we move into how to measure SEL, let us start with what is SEL. So a quick definition from our website, and this is stemming from TTF's original research on social and emotional learning. What is social and emotional learning? It is a process of acquiring a set of social and emotional skills. There are 5 essential SEL skills: self-awareness, self-management, relationship management, social awareness, and responsible decision-making in a safe, supportive environment that encourages social, emotional, and cognitive development with authentic opportunities for practicing these skills. Now, some of you might know that TTF has had an enduring and an endearing commitment to SEL of children. One way in which we have been inspired to promote SEL in schools has been through our training on whole school quality circle time, which is the simple method of sitting in a circle, having a conversation, playing a few games, and developing essential skills. Our work in schools through quality circle time actually pushed us to think about, what do children really need in schools of today? When we spoke to children, when we interacted with them through QCity, when we saw our teachers doing QCity, we were left with no doubt about the fact that yes, SEL needs to be pursued in a much more concrete and organized manner in schools. Just like science, math, English have clearly stated standards, similarly, SEL too needs to have clearly stated standards for teachers to integrate it in their classrooms. This prompted us to undertake the national level study on SEL in India, which started in 2012, went on for 5 years, and finally culminated into something called the Indian Social and Emotional Learning Framework, popularly known as iSelf. All of you can Google iSelf later. Today, what is important from iSelf is to know about 3 things. 3 things that iSelf consists of. Learning standards, which are common across age group of 6 years to 18 years. Second, age-appropriate learning outcomes, which means between 6 years and 18 years, children have age-appropriate learning outcomes. So children from 6 to 8 years can can attain certain learning outcomes. Children from 9 to 10 years can attain few learning outcomes. Children 11 and up can attain a few. Children 16 to 18 can attain a few, and these only get, complex and mature as children grow. And third is learning opportunities. Learning opportunities. So ISELF consists of learning opportunities, which are nothing but activities, tasks, various ways in which, teachers can integrate social and emotional learning in their classrooms. ISELF has been mapped by the Harvard Eason Labs with frameworks from across the world. It represents India over here. And if you can see where, I have marked green, if you see that it has got the maximum amount of depth and focus. And that is because it is clearly age banded, which means ISELF clearly tells teachers, schools, at what age group child is ready to learn which social and emotional skills. So once the ISELF got made and, we took it to schools, we piloted it out in schools, all of you would know this, that for any framework, for any concept, for any set of practices to become a norm in a system like education, the first question would be, how do you measure the effectiveness of it? Most of you might have this in mind, that tomorrow I would like to use ISELF. I would like to pursue social and emotional learning for my children, for my students. But how do I measure? How do I find out whether they are, how do I find out whether my practices are effective or not? And this pushed us in the direction of developing Sambhav. Sambhav is TTF's tool to measure social and emotional development of children. It is a set of multimodal tests. What is multimodal? All of us know about paper pencil tests. Those are the most commonly used tests. No wonder we used paper and pencil tests too for measuring children's social and emotional learning. But what we found out was that children's reading skills should not impact their scores on social and emotional learning. And due to COVID, there has been reading lag. Secondly, there are all kinds of learners. Therefore, if a learner is not really able to read or is not able to, perform a certain activity at that particular time, that child's score of social and emotional development should not be impacted. Therefore, multimodal test. It is audio and visual in nature, which means children see the test, they get an audio input, and they decide their answer and respond. Second, it is specifically for Indian children from 6 to 18 years, which are the formal schooling years in India. Why I say Indian children? Because SEL has been a concept from the West. Lots of organizations and schools adopt and follow various curriculum. It is very important that when you measure, you have to stick to the child's unique context and the child's developmental milestones. So Sambhav is based on Indian children's unique context and their developmental milestones. Last, it uses vignette-based inquiry, which means it does not just give, it doesn't simply ask a question and tell the child to say yes, no, agree, disagree. No, none of that. Sambhav presents scenarios to children, scenarios that are age appropriate, scenarios that are part of their everyday life in school, at home, in the community, and therefore it is more relatable in nature. Sambhav is aligned with the learning standards and age-banded outcomes that are stated in the ISELF, which means it is theoretically, scientifically sound because it is rooted in a framework that has been tried and tested. Now, what does a sample Sambhav report look like? What would a report on children's social and emotional development really look like? Very interesting. Well, Sambhav does a multi-layer analysis of children's social and emotional skills. When I say multi-layer, there are 3 layers. First layer is that of the competency. So, children's performance on all the 5 SEL competencies, the 5 essential competencies, is measured and is shown in the form of a graph. For example, over here, the 3 graphs, the first graph, which is the graph on the bottom where you see the pink bars, this graph is that of 939 students between the grades, from the grades 6 to 8. That means they are roughly 11 to 13-year-old. Now, this graph is showing you the how children have scored on each of the 5 SEL competencies. How is their score on self-awareness, self-management, relationship management, social awareness, and decision-making? You can clearly see that they have scored the lowest on self-awareness. Scores on other 5 competencies aren't that high either, but the maximum is on decision-making. Sambhav also, just like other report cards that my colleague Sandhya shared, accords children's performance on high, medium, and low. The second graph here, as I said, it is a multi-layer analysis. The first layer is that of the competency. The second layer, if you see the second graph, which is on the top, this is showing you relationship management. And relationship management as a competency gets broken down into first learning standard, which is using communication and social skills to interact effectively with others. You can see how children have scored. You can also see that Sambhav assesses different groups of respondents. So 1, there is all students. 2nd, there is male and female. 3rd, there is 11. There is a comparison. That is comparison across ages, across grades, between genders, etc. Yeah. Further, if you look at the graph, the learning standard gets broken down into these 3 learning outcomes. So use of communication gets broken down into use of communication and social skills in daily interactions, demonstrating cooperation and teamwork to promote group effectiveness. Last, establish positive relationships in school and at home. So relationship management learning standard gets broken down into 3 learning outcomes. The first learning standard. Similarly, there is also a second learning standard, which gets broken down into 2. This is just an example of 1 competency. There are 5 competencies. Every competency is broken into a learning standard. Every learning standard is broken into age-appropriate learning outcome. Therefore, you get to see how children are performing at various outcome levels. Yes. So SEL analysis across the form. So as I said, Sambhav is assessing children's social and emotional development across their schooling years, right from 6 to 18 years. So you can actually look at the first graph on your left over here, which shows how children have been scoring on all the 5 competencies. It is a data of 2,738 students across grades 2nd to 9th. What you can observe is that there is a decline in children's social and emotional skills with the increase in age. You can also see that they're scoring the lowest on self-awareness skills. Students score even lower. So when you go to the second graph, which is that of self-awareness, you can see that they score even lower on recognizing personal qualities and assessing personal strengths. If there is anything else that you observe in this graph, you can write down in the chat. Also, if you have any questions so far, please feel free to write down. So how is Sambhav really beneficial? How is it useful? Sambhav is useful to schools because it measures their students' social and emotional competencies, which can help them in reviewing their teaching learning processes. So if you take up Sambhav, you can actually get a clear sense of how your children are developing socially and emotionally. Therefore, you can make informed choices about various interventions, initiatives, even your daily teaching and learning practices, whether it is life skills, whether it is values curriculum, whether it is SEL per se, anything that you're subscribing to for overall development of children, Sambhav can be your guiding light. Second, organizations. Various organizations can adopt Sambhav because it can help them to measure the impact of their SEL programs, whether the programs are effective in developing children's social and emotional skills. Third, governments can use Sambhav to make policy level decisions regarding children's overall development. I would like to end with this. Very often you might say that, we pursue a certain curriculum, or we subscribe to a certain initiative, or we have a certain approach when it comes to our children's overall development. Well, the iSelf learning standards that Sambhav assesses transcend various SEL curriculum and approaches, which means that standards remain common across programs, across initiatives, across curriculums, across approaches. No matter what you're teaching, if you want to make SEL a part of your teaching, then Sambhav can help you assess whether your students are meeting the required standards. The goal is to set common learning goals for Indian children based on their learning, based on their developmental milestones. So I end my presentation on the note that let's make the Asambhav Sambhav in 2024-25 by using Sambhav as an assessment tool to measure children's social and emotional development, so that they are not only equipped with the essential academic knowledge, but also the even more essential social and emotional skills. Thank you for listening to me. Please do follow us, and there is a feedback form that my colleagues have posted in the chat box. Do give us feedback. Do let us know how did you find this webinar, and do feel free to ask questions. Thank you and have a good evening.
So thanks, Sandhya. Thanks, Monila. I think we've got a lot of time to ask questions. So people in the audience, people who are on the Zoom platform, as well as people who are watching on YouTube, please send us your questions. You can post them on chat, or you can switch on your mics and speak. Okay, are there questions?
Not yet, but somebody's
Not yet.
feedback form.
Okay. Yeah, we will be sending you the link for feedback form. Yes, so we have a question from Aishwarya. How do we help students with low confidence level, especially at the primary level? Monila, do you want to answer that?
Sure. So when you talk of confidence, there can be many factors that might be at play, right? It can be because the child is not very sure about what they are doing, or what they want to speak about, or it can be various other factors in their environment. What can really help is obviously assessing. Assessments always help. And second is incorporating SEL practices, SEL goals. You can go through iSelf, which clearly tells how to build children's confidence, how to develop a certain sense of optimism in children, how to help them take risks and challenges, try out something new with a trusted group. That is very important. If you feel that the child is low on confidence, offer the child a safe, trusting environment, a small group of people the child feels comfortable expressing and experimenting with. One can be, class teacher, but there can be other adults, or there can be friends. So forming that trusted circle, that safe environment for the child to really express, experiment, try new things out. Maya, you can add.
Avila has asked, is Sambhav any inbuilt assessment tool or is it available freely?
Sorry, I didn't get it. Is
Avila
Sambhav
asked, is Sambhav any inbuilt assessment tool
And inbuilt, I think she may
or
means.
is it available freely?
It's not available freely. It is it is available at a certain cost, but it can be administered at scale through in-person
Online.
as well as online. So
Yeah.
so that makes it very accessible for schools.
Yeah.
We
Kushal?
have another question.
Yes.
Madhu is asking a question. How to make slow learners come up to their desired level?
Yeah. Do we have Sandhya? Would you like to answer
Yeah.
that question? Sandhya, Monila. While we're waiting, yeah.
One, to start
you,
with,
Sandhya.
please don't tell them that they are slow. I would say that.
Exactly. Do not label them.
Yes. My colleague Sandhya can give you a few strategies, but yes, do not label them. Every child has a unique pace, and try to focus on micro improvements that the child makes every day. In case of slow learners, teachers tracking of micro improvements on a daily basis is even more important, because you really need to catch, where the child is improving. But Sandhya, you can throw some light here.
Thanks, Monila. Yeah, I think first of all, when you say their desired level, it means does it mean at the level that we want as outcomes for our children at a particular grade? Okay, so even if we have some academic things, standards for every grade, here, I think when we talk of our method, one is how to make students come up, but I think we need to really think of what we can do in terms of our content or in terms of our processes to involve, include, and engage every child in the classroom. So when we do our teachers' assessment or the school assessment, these are the kind of questions that we actually ask children. Do you all feel included? And when we observe class also, that is what we are seeing. Is every child a part of the teaching learning process? Is every child learning? This is the question that we ask parents. This is also what we ask even teachers to reflect on, right? So it is about persistent efforts by the teacher, and it is about recognizing the student, and it is also about integrating the SEL competencies that Monila was talking about especially in terms of goal setting, the child setting a goal, planning for it. So we can take it in two tracks. One is, I think, what the teacher can do in the classroom, especially in terms of differentiated instruction, and number two, especially, and what the child can do in terms of their own personal competencies, especially in terms of self-awareness, I think, and goal setting.
Kushal has asked a combination of 3 questions, all rolled into one. What does the execution of iSelf look like for a school? How is it blended in regular curriculum? Or is it a separate curriculum the school has to accommodate in their regular timetable?
That's quite a complex question. Maybe Monila can answer, but maybe I'd also, try answering that. The execution of iSelf looked like just today we were talking to a school in Bangalore, who've been using iSelf for the last 3-4 years, and they have integrated it very well with the whole school quality circle time approach, which some of you may be knowing, which the Teacher Foundation definitely has been using. So quality circle time is the medium, is the method that you use, and iSelf provides the SEL learning outcomes and competencies based on which you focus your sessions in the quality circle time periods. So I think that's one thing I would say. what was the second part of the question? Yes, is it separate curriculum that the school should has to accommodate? Ideally, I mean, you could integrate SEL into regular classroom teaching, whether you're teaching maths or science or social studies or language, etc. But we definitely at the Teacher Foundation recommend that a separate period is set aside once a week for fostering social emotional learning of children in your school. And interestingly, we have always believed in it. But interestingly, just last year before last, OECD, which is the Organization of Economic and Cooperation Development, the OECD countries, they had brought out a large scale survey of social emotional learning in different countries, and they have brought out a paper which talks about schools as hubs of SEL, and they recommend that SEL needs to be given prominence by setting aside a period in the timetable for fostering social emotional learning of our children. So in a way, I think it just corroborates what Teacher Foundation has always felt.
Just to add to that, also, there need not be a separate SEL teacher. Yes, there can be an SEL department in the school, and there can be somebody who is in charge, who heads it, who, takes charge of it. But every classroom teacher, every teacher, whether subject teacher or the class teacher, should be having SEL, should know what SEL is all about, and should be able to integrate SEL in his or her teaching practices.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we have a question from YouTube, from one of the viewers from YouTube. What could be the reasons for self-awareness being low in higher age group in the graph? Monila, you want to respond?
I was waiting for that question, and I'm very happy somebody noticed it. I would like to ask the group, if you can quickly type in the chat box, what can be the reasons that children's self-awareness drops as they grow up? What might be the reasons? What might be happening? What does it indicate? If you can quickly
Monila, could you switch on your video?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. If some of you have any ideas, please. Yeah, perhaps too much influence by peers and parents is what my colleague Kritika says. Yeah. If you have any guesses, please do type out. But yes, that is what can happen. Children, when they are young, when they are really young, they are very attuned to themselves. They're very attuned to what I want, what I desire, what I need, what I like, what I don't like, what gives me they're so attuned to it. That's why their reactions are also so unfiltered. You present something to them that they don't like, and they're very dramatic in saying, blunt in saying that, yeah, take it away. So they are very attuned with themselves. They're very attuned with their bodies. They're very attuned with their inner sense, inner being when they are young. Yeah, some of you have written various factors. When
pressure, stress.
Most times online games, yes, but
pressure and stress.
Yeah, pressure and stress, as they increase in age, as they are exposed to competition, as they're exposed to academic stress, as they're exposed to what the world, the society considers ideal, what is celebrated, what is looked down upon, all of that starts shaping starts shaping what I want. And that might not really be what I want. It is what the world wants. Yeah, but I'm trying to find a congruence there. And that's why it is very likely that self-awareness as a skill starts, dropping. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is adults who are to blame also, because we start focusing so much on exam pressures, curriculum, complete your tasks, do well in exams, and so on, that the personal identity of the child, of the young person, the adolescent, is not really considered important. We believe that life will wait for them to finish their exams, and then life can take over. That's not the way. Children are living entities, growing entities, while they have to study, they're also growing socially and emotionally. And if we don't give them that time and space to be in touch with who they are their self-awareness is going to suffer. So I think we have to take responsibility. When I say we, parents, as well as, of course, educators and teachers. Any other questions at this point?
Not yet. We have just had some comments about the previous
Yeah.
question.
We just have 5 minutes left. I think, yes, I think if those of you who would be more interested to know what, how these tools that Sandhya and Monila talked about actually work, please feel free to reach out to us. And it makes a lot of sense, both in terms of educational sense and school improvement sense, as well as in terms of cost effectiveness, to be in touch with us to see how they work and how you can make these assessments work for you. So if there aren't any questions, you can fill up your feedback, and I think we can leave a little early. Thank you. And I think we have the next webinar, free webinar in April. I think you will be getting notice of that very soon. I think, Rashmi, when is it? 4th or 5th?
It's supposed to be 4th, but we'll confirm the dates.
Yes, it's either the 4th or the 5th of April. So do tune in again, either on YouTube or on Zoom. If you come in early enough, you can join us on Zoom. And also do follow us on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. It's all free. So you can have access to all our podcasts and other recordings of other webinars and film clips, etc. So thank you. And join us again next time at the next webinar in April.